This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven. And today I've got a wonderful guest, Hazel Gardiner, who I'm just going to tell you how I came across her actually, which is Jonathan Buckley, who I'm sure many listeners know about. He's a photographer I've worked with now for 27 years. Anyway, he came back for an event at the Garden Museum. I think it was Rachel de Thames' book launch actually. And he said to me, "Sarah, have you met Hazel yet?" And I said, "No, I hadn't." And he said, "Oh, you've got to meet her. You get on so well. She really loves floristry. She really loves gardens, and she lives in a city which is really more and more interesting to me." Anyway, welcome, Hazel. It's so lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm an avid listener, so it's wonderful to be here.
Oh, what a pleasure. So just before we kick off into gardening, will you tell us a little bit about your background and your background in fashion and just give us a sort of picture of your life, I guess?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hertfordshire, so I always have to say that because I did grow up in kind of leafy suburbia.
Yeah.
But I was really obsessed with fashion from a very young age, kind of like 7, 8. So I knew at kind of 13 what degree I wanted to do, which is quite bizarre. But it was called fashion promotion, which is still going actually at London College of Fashion. And yeah, and like, thankfully there was only 27 places, so I don't, it's such naivety with youth. But I was just like, that's where I want to go. Yes, and it was amazing because it really across a lot of the media. So it was journalism, broadcast, and public relations. So it wasn't actually design, but I was really interested in the media. And I specialised in journalism, so I thought that was what I was going to go into. I had some amazing experiences, kind of, to work experience with like Alexander McQueen and exhibits with Kate Moss. It was an amazing opportunity to be in that university at that time. It was kind of like the late 90s, beginning of the noughties. So yeah, it's amazing. But as I said, I didn't actually go into journalism. I went into broadcast and worked for a large production company, which is still going, on lots of live music events. So like MTV Awards, the director does like the Oscars, a Super Bowl now. So yeah, really huge, high pressured.
Yeah. Live events.
Live events on television. It doesn't get more kind of like knee wobbly than that, really.
Yeah.
So I was, very successful when I worked in television, but I was very stressed underneath. Yeah. Very anxious and very stressed underneath, although on paper very high achieving.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I had a cancer diagnosis, which actually changed my entire trajectory, both personally in gardening and in my career. That was in 2007. So that was the kind of pinch point that really just made me completely look at everything, reflect at everything, and change what I needed to change in my entire life.
Wow.
Well, I think the main thing was that I actually had so much fear before that diagnosis. I had a very successful career, but knew I wasn't happy. And I think like a lot of people, if you think, it's such a privilege to be in a job that you might think, oh, what if happiness comes at the bottom of the list?
Yes.
Or actually, that affects so much of your mental health and then therefore your body, in my mind, in my opinion, that I knew that had to change. So,
yes. And so you came out of the fashion world, and how did you then morph into being a florist and a gardener?
So, so during that diagnosis whole period, I had treatment for about 15 months, really grueling. And I couldn't actually do anything. I couldn't work. I couldn't really read, had very aggressive, it was a very rare cancer. So they really kind of chucked everything at it. Thankfully, I'm here today because of that. But it coincided with me owning my first flat, which had a very small garden, but it was mine. I really wanted a flat that had outdoor space. It was really important. Even though I wasn't a gardener at that time, my mum was an amazing gardener. So I'd watched her. We watched Gardeners World together. We used to go to all the royal parks because we just, lived in Zone 6. So it really was a part of my childhood. And yeah, it wasn't until that point of kind of, I suppose, a few things colliding, me being ill, me having a garden, me really needing to find something else that I can do that wasn't reading, that wasn't, I couldn't even watch television sometimes because I felt so disorientated because of chemotherapy. So I started growing in this tiny urban garden, and it just brought me so much joy.
What aspect did it have? Was it sunny enough?
Yes, so it was quite sunny. I think it was really quite a barren. It was in Walthamstow, and it was just concrete with borders that went round the side.
Yes,
but it was enough, and I had pots, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I didn't really care at that point. Actually, I just found it very soothing. Obviously, being outside, it was something I could do whilst I was recuperating from chemotherapy. But also, for me, it was the power of the seasons unfolding. It was knowing that these things were going to happen when my life was very, very chaotic.
Yeah.
Having the certainty of the seasons, or the certainty of a seed coming, coming into life, or a certainty that will grow, was just really important to me, where I couldn't root myself anywhere else, but I could in nature. And I think that was kind of really transformative for me. But it wasn't until I actually then launched a vintage clothing business. I didn't actually go into flowers or gardening for another 6 or 7 years after that. But I had no fear, because I was like, if I get better, I'm just going to do everything. Like, why have I stopped myself? I think most of us really fear death, and I'd completely kind of had to deal with that, because the stat for me living was really horrible. So I vowed if I was going to get through it, I'd just do life exactly as I wanted to do it. So yes, I launched a vintage clothing business and events business. And then after about 6 or 7 years, I grew kind of a bit despondent with it. My personal style had changed. It kind of morphed online, and it was a lot about pop-ups and meeting people. So that kind of made me quite sad. So I retrained in 2016, and that's how my kind of floral and gardening journey really, really began.
How brilliant. And so did you go back to college, or did you go and do an apprenticeship, or?
Yeah, so I've really kind of thought what was the best angle to do it. And because I'd worked in, production, fashion, studied in journalism, all these things, I felt I actually just needed a course to tell me. And I knew I'd styled, so I knew I had an understanding of colour and depth and texture and how you kind of put things together, but I didn't know about the mechanics. So for me, the best decision was to do a career course. It was a 4-week career course in the Queen's, rather than a Capel Manor or anything like that. Because I did feel I had some skills that could be transferred into what I wanted to do. So that course seemed the best for me. And it was led by Wagner Kirschken, who's an amazing floral artist in his own right now. And it was incredible. And it just plugged in everything I needed. But as we all know, the majority of my learning happened the minute I left and started working. But it was a great kind of grounding in the business of flowers, really.
And so you had your experience, you drew on your experience from doing the events, and then added this layer of nature and of your garden in Walthamstow into becoming an event florist, basically. And that was the business that you then launched.
Exactly. I knew whilst I was training, I didn't want to have a retail shop.
Yeah.
I really love, one-off projects. I really love set design. So I knew that I wanted to do that kind of floral design, which I have to say to people is really important. I think people just think if you're a florist, you just do one thing. There's so many different avenues of how you can utilize your talent and still work with flowers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I very much wanted to be an event florist and work with brands. I worked with lots of brands when I had my vintage clothing company.
Yeah.
It just seemed the natural progression for where I was going to take a floral business.
Fantastic. And you're still doing that now?
Yeah, so now it's really kind of morphed and grown and evolved. So now, as well as kind of, obviously we do flowers for events and retail installations, but now also we do large installations. So we've done lots at RHS Chelsea, and it is more akin to kind of set design. We will go in and like dress a whole space, not only with cut flowers, we do a lot of planting installations as well, live planting. And then now I also broadcast and write and do television, obviously. So yeah, it's just I've kind of morphed into one direction, and then we still have the studio, which does all the incredible flower installations that people see.
So you jumped over all those quite quickly. Can I take you back to broadcast, television, and write? So let's unpick those a bit. So I know you're on This Morning, and I know you work with my hero, Alan Titchmarsh, who is the kindest man in the universe. So tell us a little bit about your broadcasting.
Yes, so it kind of came out of COVID. I mean, it's something that I have done. I studied it. I studied journalism, broadcast, and obviously I worked behind the screen in music television for so long and worked with talent and worked with presenters. And it's something I always wanted to do, but it just never kind of happened. I remember actually doing an audition for T4, got right to the end, but I didn't get it. But actually now, because I'm skilled in a particular industry, I feel it's much easier for me to broadcast about that rather than just kind of, be on kind of like a TV show, a pop show or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels a lot more natural to me. And it really began because I started doing much more content on our Instagram when it was a pandemic. So it was really difficult to kind of get content. So then I started kind of educating and doing small videos about the garden. Because I have to say my gardening evolution really began when I moved from Walthamstow to Stoke Newington. I moved in with my husband Andrew, and it was a much larger garden. So that's when I really started gardening kind of seriously. And with being a florist, for me, it made sense. And I was in a privileged position to learn from the land, but it made sense for me to start growing and understanding cut, which makes me understand cut flowers, as you know, much more. If you know how things work in the ground, it's so much easier to know what to do with them.
So tell me about your Stoke Newington garden. So just describe that to us, let us kind of visualise that.
Yes, come into the garden with me. So we live in, as I said, in Stoke Newington, Hackney, and we've got quite a large garden. This road is particularly known for having large gardens. So it's like a secret paradise. You don't actually know it's here, really. It's about 14 metres by 7 metres.
Wow.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
it's really big. It actually really reminds me when I first came here of my family garden, which is really lovely. I looked at it and I think I took a sneaky picture and sent it to my sibling. And I was like, oh my gosh, this really feels like our home garden. So that was very special, actually. And so over the years, so I've lived here, started working on the garden in 2014, and now we're in 2024. So it's seen a lot of change. Particularly, we did an extension in 2016, but that kind of hardly really ate into the garden. But it's very much zoned. I really believe in zoning. So it kind of starts with the patio, and we've got a kind of gorgeous seating area, flanked with like 2 really large olive trees underplanted with white and purple lavender. And then you step down and then there's borders all around the lawn. I would have no lawn, but we have a dog.
Okay.
So that's the husband has asked me to keep that, but I've been inching away at it. So it's a circular lawn and everything kind of circles around it. Then we've got like a gravel path out that goes down the middle with York stone at intervals throughout that. And at the end, you've got my studio garden, which is, again, surrounded by gravel, but also I planted birch trees about 7 years ago. There's another circular seating area down there that's more kind of shady and wild. And there's a big cherry plum tree. And we're actually flanked by lots of, we've got really old pear tree, really old oak trees to the right and left of us. So it really is bucolic. And planting wise, it's a lot of evergreens because I haven't got that much chance to garden. So I really wanted things to obviously do something all year round, but have lots of texture. So I've got so many grasses, and actually I have got a lot of roses, which kind of just began when I first started kind of planting and then has gone on. But then I've got like evergreen balls of yew and hebe, and then Stipa gigantea, Stipa ponytails. Tons of roses, cardoons. So it's quite a mix of kind of formal structure, but then wildness as well.
Ah, lovely. Sounds perfect.
Thank you, sir.
And then you've got your studio at the end where you do a lot of your work.
Yes.
And so, what's sort of in the future? I'd love to also interrogate you about your favourite plants, but we'll come to that.
Yeah.
But you're still doing lots of television. And what's the future got for you at the moment?
I mean, on the kind of like future board, it's still working with like the amazing brands that we work with. So we've got a really exciting collaboration. We're lucky enough to work with brands that are in fragrance or skincare or jewelry or fashion, but whatever it is that they excel in, they're always rooted in nature by some coincidence. I think it's probably no coincidence. So like we've worked with L'Occitane. We're doing an amazing collaboration with Alex Monroe Jewelry, which is very exciting for Design Week in 2025. So Alex, as a jeweler who's immersed in nature, is working with me as a florist, also the same. And we're kind of working on this big project that will come to fruition in a huge exhibition at the Garden Museum. And it's really kind of how he sees nature and how he's literally making pieces of metal that I will then manipulate. It's hugely exciting. And I just think we really have bounced off each other, and seeing how he works with everything. So, it's very close up, right? If you're a jeweler, it's so close up. And I think first, a lot of florists were used to kind of like the bugging favorite in a big installation. You're literally like just feverishly kind of putting stems in, and we don't get a chance to really look. So that's an amazing collaboration that's coming next year. And then I'm going to be in House and Gardens. I've just been interviewed by the wonderful Claire Foster. So I'm going to be in the December issue. So that'll be wonderful. And then, the Christmas word has been mentioned, Sarah, quite a lot.
Yes.
So we're back. We're lucky enough to work with Monmouth. For so many years now, we do all their shops, all their decorations for Christmas.
Great.
So it's just kind of like plugging away. And then, as I said, more television coming up. So, yeah.
And you're very involved with the Garden Museum, aren't you?
Yes, I am a trustee. I've been a trustee for about 3 or 4 years now. And it was actually my father. My father's a professor. And he introduced us to the Garden Museum, way before they kind of evolved into the space that they are now with the restaurant, but even before that. So, it's been a real long love affair with that museum in particular. And obviously, that's way before I worked in anything to do with the land. So it's when the opportunity came up to kind of interview for a trustee, I just thought, well, that's, I'm hugely passionate about education and diversity and inclusivity. And that felt the absolute best channel to be able to do that. It's a wonderful institution to be a part of. And I think they're really forward thinking and incredible. So. Yeah.
Well, it would be so great if I can get you back again, and when the Alex Monroe exhibition is happening, and we could chat about that and about the designs and how you're tying together. So that would be really fun.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
So before we finish, I would like to do the kind of standard question that I tend to ask our guests is, could you give me 3 to 5 of your favourite garden plants and why, and 3 to 5 of your favourite cut flowers and why?
Oh gosh, so garden plants, I suppose it's actually just been banned, but it's just one of my favourites. It's Gunnerer. I've loved it ever since I see it. I really like things that are kind of prehistoric looking.
Yes.
So it's like Gunnerer or rhubarb, anything that's huge.
Yes.
Do you know what? I just do really love like topiary yew. I know it's so traditional.
Yeah.
But I just think it's so magical. And a lot of my friends ask about garden design. I'm just like, you really need to get those pillars in. Yeah. And I just think the froth sitting on them in winter is just it's so gorgeous. So, yes. And then there's going to be a lot of foliage because it's funny because I love flowers so much, but actually the more time's gone on, I actually think I have a huge love affair for foliage. So I love, is it Japanese grass? So Hakonechloa.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. I love grasses. I think when I was ill, it was the texture and the movement and the sound of them. So that's a particular fave. What else do I like in the garden? Actually, edibles.
Yeah.
So this is something now I've kind of learned a lot about cut flowers. We're now going into more like medicinal purposes, herbal purposes, dual purpose plants that really work in the garden and planting decorative with edible. So I love lovage. I think I love it because my chef, he's not a chef by profession, but he does all the cooking. He really loves kind of that. So I love lovage.
Yeah. And then what about cut flowers? So if you were cast off to a desert island and you were only allowed to, on a raft would appear once a week, 3 cut flowers, what would be the ones that you would really love, regardless of season?
So for me, it's roses. I mean, I can't be without them. So maybe like an Emily Bronte rose or Desdemona, or I mean, even things like my rambling rector give me so much joy. Even their hips, And it is just that fragrance for me that you just can't beat. For a British rose, you absolutely cannot beat it for beauty, for fragrance in floristry and in your garden. I think it's amazing. And then, I mean, I love Apricotta Cosmos. I mean, they're just so beautiful. Chocolate Cosmos, Apricotta, both for work and for cutting, absolutely love. And then I suppose, although I don't grow them anymore because I find it quite hard with the upkeep of them, the tubers, dahlias, I mean, we all love them. Again, anything huge, cafe au lait, absolutely. A dinner plate dahlia is my happy place. So I think those are some of my like top favourite.
Wonderful. Well, that's a very good list. So nice to chat. Thank you so much. And it would be really great to link up again over your show at the Garden Museum, that would be really good.
Yes.
So I'll be in touch.
That would be amazing. Yes, yeah, definitely do, because Alex is great as well. We actually met on his podcast. That's how we met. So
Great.
Yeah. So we'd love to do that.
So when's the Alex Munro show?
It is part of London Craft Week, which is the 12th to the 18th of May, 2025.
Fantastic.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's just a wonderful podcast to be a part of. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Thanks very much for listening to Grow Cookie to Range, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven. Next week, it's actually Arthur is going to be here, and he's going to interview a real expert on edible flowers, because we've noticed a massive increase in interest here at Perch Hill in edible flowers. And Carolyn Dunster is going to chat to Arthur about the ones that she really recommends. So at any time of year, you can have an edible flower, any month in the year, but that's what they'll be chatting about. So you'll see them then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.